In the far corner of the galaxy, hidden under the glow of dying stars, a powerful alien race lived with one purpose. They were called the Valens. Their bodies were tall and sharp, with strong arms and eyes that glowed like cold fire. They had built cities of steel that stretched across entire planets. But their greatest dream was not peace or beauty. Their greatest dream was conquest. For them, the universe was a place to rule, and Earth was the prize they had waited for. 10,000 years ago, the first Valen rulers had spoken about Earth. They had seen the small blue world from their crystal lenses and marked it as a land worth taking. Earth had water, forests, metals, and energy hidden under its soil. More than that, Earth had life. The Valens thought humans were simple creatures who could never rise against them. So they began to prepare. They told their children, and their children told the next generation, and so the chain of preparation never ended. For 10,000 years, the Valens sharpened their skills. Their armies trained in endless halls that shook with the sound of weapons. They learned to march in perfect lines. They practiced battles again and again until no mistake could be found. Their ships were built in the dark docks of space, each one larger than mountains. Engines roared like storms, and their weapons could cut through metal with a single strike. They believed no enemy could stand against such power. The Valens did not live for family or joy. They lived only for war. A young Valen was placed in training from the moment he could stand. He learned how to fight before he learned how to rest. He learned how to obey before he learned how to speak. To be Valen was to be a soldier, and to be a soldier was to conquer Earth one day. Their leaders were proud of their discipline. They said that training without end would make their race perfect. 10,000 years, they repeated, would make their armies sharper than any sword. To them, humans were nothing more than animals with soft minds. They thought humans could never understand war the way they did. Every lesson, every drill, every test, was built on the belief that humans would fall in minutes. The Valen fleet grew larger with each century. When one ship was finished, another began. When one soldier grew old, another took his place. The walls of their training halls were filled with the names of the best warriors, and songs of their victories filled the air. They fought mock battles that lasted days. They created machines that could see through walls, weapons that could destroy entire cities in a flash, and armor that turned their soldiers into walking fortresses. On their home world, the sky was always covered with smoke from the forges. The ground shook under the weight of marching drills. Children looked up at the warships and dreamed of the day they too would set foot on Earth. The idea of conquest was not only a plan. It was their faith, their culture, and their very identity. The Valen High Council spoke often of the future. In their great chambers, lit by burning crystals, they drew maps of Earth. They marked the oceans, the mountains, and the cities. They argued over which city should fall first, and how humans would be forced to serve them. To the Valens, it was not a question of if Earth would fall. It was only a question of when. The long years passed, and the universe changed, but the Valens never lost their goal. They watched as stars died, as new species rose and fell, but still they kept their eyes on the blue world. 10,000 years of training gave them confidence so deep that it blinded them. They thought they had become invincible. When the final moment came, their leaders called the armies together. Millions of soldiers stood in lines that stretched across the plains of their planet. Their voices rose in a single cry, a promise of glory. Their ships lifted into the dark sky, carrying their weapons and their pride. The invasion they had waited for was finally at hand. But in their long training, in their endless drills, the Valens had forgotten one truth. They had learned to fight with perfect control, but they had never learned how to face the unexpected. They had studied strength, but they had not studied spirit. They knew how to break walls, but they did not know how to break the will of a people who refused to surrender. As the Valen fleet left their home world, their commanders spoke with certainty. They said Earth would fall in 5 minutes. They believed 10,000 years of preparation had made defeat impossible. They could not see that their greatest mistake was already set. And far away, on the small blue planet they dreamed of, humans lived their lives, unaware that a storm was on its way. The journey of the Valen fleet across the stars was long, but their ships were built for such travel. Each warship was like a floating city, armed with weapons that glowed with silent fire. The fleet moved together in perfect lines, their engines burning bright in the black sky. Inside every ship, soldiers stood ready, armored, and prepared. Their leaders told them again that Earth would fall quickly. Their hearts were filled with pride, and their voices sang the promise of conquest. At last, the blue world came into view. Earth spun quietly in the dark of space, its oceans shining like liquid silver and its clouds curling like soft smoke. The soldiers looked at it through the windows of their ships. Some whispered among themselves that it looked smaller than they had imagined. Others thought of how simple it would be to crush such a fragile world. None of them believed it could resist. The Valen commanders gathered in their great chamber aboard the largest ship. They studied the maps of Earth once more. They marked the largest cities, the oceans that carried ships, and the mountains that stood tall. They decided where the first strikes would fall. To them, it was not a question of survival or danger. It was only a matter of which city would burn first. With a signal from the High Commander, the fleet began its descent. Engines roared louder than thunder as the ships entered the orbit of Earth. The glow of fire spread across the night skies of the planet, seen by millions of human eyes. People stepped out of their homes, looked upward, and saw strange lights moving like rivers across the stars. At first, many thought it was a wonder, some new sign of nature or a secret machine built by humans. But soon the truth became clear. Governments around the world rushed to their control rooms. Satellites sent pictures of massive objects moving across the sky. Scientists confirmed they were not human ships. Soldiers were called to stations, leaders spoke quickly over radios, and people began to realize that they were not alone. The long dream of many thinkers, the idea that life existed beyond Earth, was no longer a question. It was a fact. But this fact did not bring joy. It brought fear. The Valens sent their first message to Earth. It was a signal carried across the airwaves, strong enough to be heard on every device, in every language. The message was simple and cold. It said that Earth now belonged to the Valens. It said that humans must surrender, for resistance would be crushed in moments. The voice of the alien commander was heavy, deep, and filled with pride. To the Valens, this was not a threat but a promise. Across Earth, people listened in silence. Some felt fear and despair. Others felt anger. In villages and cities, in homes and streets, people looked at each other and wondered what would come next. Humanity had never faced such a power before. Yet even in fear, there was a spark of unity. No one wanted to kneel. No one wanted to see their world taken by strangers. As the ships moved closer, shadows crossed the sky. The largest warships floated above oceans and mountains, their forms so great that they looked like new continents in the air. Their lights cut through the clouds, and their weapons hummed with energy. It was a sight no human could forget. Children pointed in awe, elders prayed for safety, and soldiers gripped their weapons tighter. The invasion had begun, and the fate of Earth was now at stake. Inside the ships, the Valen soldiers cheered. They thought the sight of their fleet alone would break human courage. They imagined humans running, hiding, and surrendering without a fight. The commanders told them again that humans would not last even 5 minutes. Their discipline, their weapons, and their training made them believe that victory was already won before the first strike. But on Earth, a different spirit was rising. In every land, leaders called for unity. Scientists shared their knowledge, engineers prepared machines, and ordinary people stood ready to defend their homes. No one wanted to give away their freedom. No one wanted to see Earth taken. Humanity, which often argued among itself, now stood as one. The threat from the sky had awakened a fire in the hearts of people everywhere. As night turned to day, the Valen fleet spread across the sky. They prepared their weapons, and their soldiers stood in lines, waiting for the order to strike. The blue world below seemed quiet, fragile, and small. To them, it looked ready to fall. Yet the silence of Earth was not weakness. It was the silence before the storm. The first moments of contact had ended. The arrival was complete. Now the war was about to begin. The Valen fleet hung in the sky like a storm of iron. Their ships glowed with power, and their weapons hummed with energy waiting to be unleashed. On Earth, people felt the weight of fear, but fear alone did not control them. The first shock of the alien arrival soon turned into action. Humanity had always faced danger, and every danger had taught them how to adapt. In underground bunkers, command centers came alive. Screens filled with maps and signals. Leaders from different nations spoke through hurried calls, their voices serious but steady. They knew that Earth had never been fully united before. Countries had argued, competed, and fought with each other for centuries. But now, under the shadow of the alien fleet, those divisions began to fall. They all understood the same truth. If they did not stand together, there would be no tomorrow. Scientists worked quickly. They studied the signals of the Valen fleet, measuring the energy that flowed from their engines and weapons. Engineers in hidden laboratories prepared machines that had been planned only as ideas. Drones were armed, satellites were adjusted, and defense systems were placed on high alert. Every piece of human knowledge, every tool that had been built for exploration or defense, was now turned toward survival. But it was not only the leaders and scientists who prepared. Ordinary people across the world refused to remain helpless. Farmers stored food for their villages. Workers turned their tools into weapons. Students gathered in groups to share ideas on how to resist. In the cities, people built shelters, not out of fear alone but with determination that their families would not be taken. Humanity was waking up to a challenge greater than any before, and in this challenge, they began to find their unity. The first response came not from the weapons of armies but from the voices of people. Across radios, screens, and networks, humans spoke to each other with a single message. They would not surrender. They would not give up their world. No matter the strength of the Valen fleet, Earth would stand. These words spread like fire, filling hearts with courage. The Valens listened to these human voices with cold amusement. They believed the humans were brave only in words. Their commanders laughed and said the courage of humans would vanish once the first city was struck. They thought humans did not understand the meaning of war. But what they did not see was that humanity's greatest strength had always been its spirit. In one mountain base, a young commander of Earth's defense forces stood before his soldiers. He reminded them that humans had faced storms, quakes, and even wars among themselves, yet they had always rebuilt. He told them that the sky may now be filled with enemy ships, but the ground belonged to humans, and no power could take it unless they allowed it. His soldiers raised their weapons with fierce cries. In the coastal cities, navies prepared their fleets. Ships armed with missiles moved out into the seas. Pilots sat ready in their aircraft, eyes sharp and steady. The order had not yet come to strike, but their spirits burned with readiness. They all knew they might face weapons far beyond their own, yet they chose to stand. At the same time, in hidden research centers, scientists worked without sleep. Some searched for weaknesses in the alien signals. Others designed ways to use Earth's atmosphere as a shield. Ideas came fast, and though many failed, none were wasted. Humanity's power was not only in weapons but in creativity. Families gathered together at night, watching the glowing ships in the sky. Parents told their children not to fear, promising that humans would fight. In those moments, even the youngest began to understand what it meant to defend their home. Fear was there, but alongside fear came courage. The Valens had spent 10,000 years learning control and discipline. Yet what they faced now was something they had never trained against. Humanity was messy, unpredictable, and full of passion. When humans were pushed into danger, they did not simply follow rules. They adapted, they created, and they resisted with all their strength. Across the world, people prepared in ways the aliens could not imagine. In a small village, a group of workers turned farming machines into traps for landing troops. In a city, students reprogrammed drones to spy on the alien ships. In the desert, old engineers built weapons from scrap metal and spare parts. Every corner of Earth became a workshop of defense. As the hours passed, Earth was no longer waiting. It was preparing. The world was not silent but alive with the sound of action. Humanity did not have 10,000 years of training. They had only their courage, their will, and their unity. But sometimes, those were stronger than any weapon. The first clash was near. The Valen fleet prepared to open fire, believing the humans would break in minutes. On the ground, humans stood ready, their hearts steady, their eyes filled with fire. They were not waiting for rescue. They were ready to fight for their home. The stage was set. The invaders had arrived with pride, but the defenders of Earth had answered with unity. The sky and the ground now waited for the first strike, and in that waiting, a new spirit of humanity had already been born. The Valen fleet circled above Earth like a crown of fire. Their commanders believed the time for waiting was over. Inside the largest warship, the High Commander stood before his officers. His voice was steady and filled with pride. He gave the order that had been prepared for 10,000 years. The first strike would begin. In the next moment, the sky over Earth changed. Beams of energy shot downward, tearing through the clouds. The air burned as the weapons cut lines of light across the sky. Cities below shook as the blast struck near them. Towers of glass cracked, roads split apart, and people ran for cover. The Valens thought fear would spread faster than fire. They expected humans to kneel before such power. But the humans did not kneel. In one city, as buildings trembled, sirens filled the streets. Soldiers rushed to their posts, guiding people into shelters. Firefighters and medics worked side by side, moving calmly even under the falling light. Above the city, human defense systems came alive. Rockets launched from hidden bases, leaving white trails across the sky. They raced upward toward the alien ships. The Valen soldiers watched the rockets with little concern. They had been told that human weapons were weak. They thought these attacks would break like waves against stone. Yet when the first rocket struck one of the smaller Valen ships, an explosion lit the sky. The ship shook, fire spread along its hull, and it fell burning into the ocean. For the first time, the Valens saw that humans were not as helpless as they had believed. Across the seas, human navies opened fire. Warships launched missiles, filling the horizon with light. Aircraft rose into the sky, moving fast and sharp, striking at the edges of the alien fleet. The Valens were surprised again. They had expected fear, not resistance. They had expected silence, not thunder. The High Commander of the Valens ordered his troops to descend. Soldiers dropped from their ships in bright pods, landing in fields and streets. They marched in lines, weapons glowing, ready to crush any human they saw. But the humans met them with courage. In a farming village, workers had prepared old machines as traps. When the alien pods landed, the soil broke beneath them, pulling them into pits lined with iron. In a city street, students used drones to attack the alien soldiers, flying them close and forcing explosions against their armor. In the desert, engineers used old weapons hidden in caves to fire at the landing ships, breaking them before the soldiers could even step out. The Valens were trained for perfect battles, but they had never trained for this. The humans fought with chaos, creativity, and willpower. No two groups of humans fought the same way. Each person used what was near, Each community defended with what they had. The Valens had no plan for such disorder. In the skies above, one of Earth's pilots flew his jet close to a massive alien warship. He released a storm of missiles, then pulled away at the last second. The blasts ripped through the underbelly of the ship. Sparks and fire trailed behind it as the ship began to fall. The pilot's voice came through the radio, calm and steady. He told his people that the aliens could be hurt, that they were not invincible. The message spread across the world. Hope rose like fire in every heart. If one ship could fall, then more could fall. If one soldier could be stopped, then more could be stopped. The humans now believed they could fight. The Valens grew angry. They sent more fire from the skies, striking at mountains and seas. They tried to destroy everything that moved. Yet their focus made them careless. Their attacks created smoke and fire, but through that smoke, human weapons struck again and again. In one coastal city, a group of children watched from a shelter. They could hear the battle above, the thunder of ships and the roar of explosions. One of them whispered that the aliens would win because they had trained for so long. But another child answered with firm words. He said humans always found a way. Even in the darkest storm, humans never stopped fighting. The children believed him, and their eyes no longer showed fear. The Valens had expected to crush Earth in 5 minutes. Instead, 5 minutes had passed and they had already lost ships, soldiers, and the clear order of their plan. The High Commander shouted at his officers, demanding that they bring control. But control was slipping away. The humans were not fighting as expected, and every moment made the invasion harder. On the ground, humans stood together, their spirits stronger than their weapons. In the air, their rockets and planes cut through the sky. Across the seas, their ships struck with fierce power. Humanity was proving a truth the Valens had never believed. Training for 10,000 years could not prepare them for the strength of a world united. The first strike was over. Fire and smoke filled the air, but Earth still stood. The humans had not broken. They had only grown stronger. And now, the Valens began to feel something they had never felt before. After the first strike, the Valens were shocked. They had trained for 10,000 years, yet humans had resisted in ways they could not predict. The alien commanders gathered aboard their largest ship, staring at the reports streaming across their screens. Ships destroyed, soldiers trapped, weapons stopped before they could fire. They could not understand it. The humans were not following rules or patterns. They were unpredictable, clever, and brave. On Earth, the people were not waiting for orders. They acted with courage and imagination. A factory worker in one city used the machines around him to block alien soldiers. Conveyor belts moved heavy crates, crushing the invaders' armor. Sparks flew, and smoke rose, but the humans pressed forward. In the same city, a group of students used drones and simple wires to sabotage a landing ship. The craft tilted and fell, spilling the Valens onto the ground. The humans had turned ordinary tools into weapons. In the deserts, engineers had worked through the night. They had built hidden traps and devices from scrap metal. When alien scouts arrived, the traps snapped shut, capturing soldiers in cages and nets. The engineers watched from a distance, ready to strike again if needed. Every corner of the world became a battlefield, and every human used what was near to defend their home. The Valens tried to maintain their discipline. Their soldiers moved in lines, their weapons glowing, their voices calling orders. But the more they tried, the more the humans disrupted them. The aliens had trained to face strong armies with known tactics. They had never faced a force that did not act like an army at all. Humans fought like one mind in many bodies, adapting to every new danger with speed and creativity. In the skies, human pilots showed the same bravery. Jets dove at alien warships, dodging beams and missiles with sharp movements. Each strike was unpredictable. The aliens had expected fear, not strategy. Rockets and missiles hit targets that had been assumed invincible. The pilots communicated with simple words, passing warnings and advice to each other while striking with skill. On the ground, families and communities joined the fight. They were not trained as soldiers, but they understood their world. They knew the cities, the forests, the mountains. They turned familiar places into defenses. Bridges became barriers, tunnels became traps, and even ordinary buildings hid weapons and strategies. The humans' knowledge of their own land became a weapon that the Valens could not match. A small village faced a landing pod of alien soldiers. Children had watched the events from hiding, learning what to do. They helped guide villagers to safe positions and even threw small firebombs that had been prepared in secret. Adults moved in to trap the soldiers, using ropes and nets, while the alien armor and weapons struggled against the simple human ingenuity. Every invader caught in this way was proof of the hidden strength of humans. The High Commander of the Valens was frustrated. He had expected order, control, and victory. Instead, he faced chaos. Every plan he issued failed to achieve its purpose. Ships fell from the sky. Soldiers were trapped or destroyed. The humans did not retreat. They did not panic. They fought together, thinking quickly and acting with courage. The commander shouted at his officers, demanding they regain control, but it was impossible. The humans moved faster than the aliens could adapt. Even the youngest humans played a role. Teenagers and children sent messages across networks, guiding soldiers, marking alien positions, and warning communities of danger. Their eyes were wide, but their hearts were steady. In basements, on rooftops, in streets and forests, every person became a part of the defense. The humans showed that strength was not only in weapons but in spirit, intelligence, and unity. By the end of the day, the Valens realized their mistake. They had trained for perfect combat. They had mastered every attack, every formation, every strategy. Yet against humans, all their preparation was useless. Humans fought not as individuals following rules, but as one living force, unpredictable and unstoppable in its creativity. The Valens had believed that discipline and strength alone could conquer, but they had forgotten the human heart. On Earth, the people were exhausted but determined. Fires burned, machines smoked, and the sounds of battle filled the air. Yet every victory, no matter how small, gave humans courage. They had proven that even against a race trained for 10,000 years, they could resist. Even 5 minutes had shown the power of their will. Humanity's hidden strength had begun to shine. The Valens, for the first time in their long history, felt fear. They had underestimated humans. They had counted on training and weapons, but they had not counted on courage, imagination, and the unity of a people defending their home. And in that realization, the first cracks of defeat appeared. Across the world, humans did not celebrate yet. They knew the battle was far from over. But they also knew a truth that no training, no army, and no weapon could destroy. Their spirit was stronger than fear, their courage brighter than fire, and their will more powerful than any invader. Humanity had shown its hidden power. And the Valens would soon learn that this power was something no 10,000 years of preparation could overcome. The Valens had come to Earth with pride, convinced that their 10,000 years of training would guarantee victory. Yet after only a few hours of battle, they discovered that their plans were failing. Ships that had been built like mountains fell from the sky. Soldiers who had mastered every combat technique were trapped by humans in clever ways. The Valens could not believe that all their preparation had been met with such unexpected resistance. Across the cities and fields, humans moved like one living force. Every attack by the aliens was met with adaptation. Rockets were intercepted, soldiers were trapped, and landing pods were crushed before they could open. Engineers and pilots worked together with ordinary people, creating defenses as they moved. Each human fought with courage, and their unpredictability made the Valens confused and frustrated. In the sky, the largest Valen warship was struck by a coordinated attack. A fleet of jets launched from hidden bases, each moving with precision and courage. Missiles hit engines, sparks flew across the hull, and alarms blared inside the alien ship. The commander tried to regain control, but communication was lost. The ship began to fall, crashing into the ocean below. The humans had turned their knowledge of the land and sky into a weapon stronger than the Valens had ever imagined. On the ground, human resistance was even more impressive. Soldiers, engineers, and civilians worked together. Traps and barricades were everywhere. Streets became mazes that slowed the invaders. Forests and mountains were used to hide weapons and ambush the aliens. Villages and towns became strongholds. Every attempt the Valens made to move forward ended in confusion, injury, or defeat. The aliens were powerful, but humans were clever and united. In one valley, a group of Valen soldiers tried to advance with heavy armor and weapons. They expected humans to scatter in fear, but the humans had anticipated them. Using ropes, pulleys, and clever machines, the soldiers were trapped and disarmed. The Valens struggled to escape, but the humans did not stop. Every moment they moved, they adapted, finding new ways to resist the invaders. Even the most disciplined Valens could not maintain order. The more they fought, the more chaos grew in their ranks. Ships collided in the sky as pilots tried to avoid the unexpected attacks. Soldiers argued over what to do next. Commanders shouted orders, but the humans did not follow patterns. They moved unpredictably, striking from unexpected directions, and the Valens found that their long training had not prepared them for this. The Valen High Commander watched in disbelief as reports came in. The fleet was losing ships faster than they could replace them. Soldiers were being captured or destroyed. The humans had used their creativity and courage to overcome weapons far stronger than anything on Earth. The commander had trained for 10,000 years for victory, yet his entire army was slipping into defeat in moments. Doubt began to spread across the alien fleet. Humans did not stop. Across oceans, deserts, forests, and cities, they continued their resistance. Engineers repaired weapons, soldiers held their positions, and ordinary people assisted wherever they could. Even children helped, carrying messages, marking alien positions, and warning communities. Humans had become a force the Valens could not predict or control. Their discipline and planning were useless against this living, adaptive resistance. The collapse of the Valens became more visible with every hour. The largest ships fell from the sky. Soldiers panicked, some fleeing from battles they had expected to win. Communication lines broke. Weapons malfunctioned from unexpected attacks. The fleet that had seemed invincible at the start of the invasion was now struggling just to survive. On Earth, humans were tired but determined. They had defended their homes, their families, and their world. They had shown courage, intelligence, and unity stronger than any weapon. Every victory, no matter how small, added to their confidence. The aliens had underestimated the power of the human spirit, and now that mistake was clear. The Valen High Commander made one final attempt to rally his forces. He ordered a regrouping, trying to form a single plan that could still salvage the invasion. But it was too late. The humans were already everywhere, unpredictable and determined. Traps, weapons, and strategies made it impossible for the aliens to recover. Their confidence was gone. Their pride had been shattered. By the end of the day, the Valens realized that their long training and powerful weapons could not defeat Earth. They had prepared for 10,000 years, yet in moments of real battle, they were overwhelmed by courage, creativity, and unity. The humans had shown them that strength was not only in preparation or numbers but in spirit, will, and determination. The collapse was complete. Ships burned, soldiers were defeated, and the fleet was in chaos. The Valens, who had believed they were invincible, now understood that Earth's defenders were stronger than they could ever imagine. Humanity had turned the invasion into a lesson the universe would not forget. And above it all, on the small blue planet, humans stood proud. They had survived the first wave of the greatest invasion the galaxy had ever known. They had shown that even in the face of unimaginable power, courage and unity could triumph. The Valens had trained for 10,000 years, but the humans had something no training could prepare for. The sun rose over Earth, casting light on cities, forests, and oceans that had endured the first great battle of the invasion. Smoke still rose from broken buildings, and the sound of distant explosions reminded humans of the fierce struggle that had taken place. Yet the world had not fallen. Humans had survived, and the Valens were in retreat. The greatest invasion the galaxy had ever known had failed, and the lesson was clear. On the ground, people emerged from shelters and safe zones. They were tired, their clothes torn, and their hands covered in dust and soot. But their faces held determination and pride. Soldiers, engineers, and ordinary citizens had worked together to defend every corner of their world. Across every land, communities celebrated small victories, knowing each one had contributed to the survival of humanity. The Valens were scattered. Their ships burned in oceans and forests, and the surviving soldiers had no place to regroup. Panic spread through the alien ranks. Their high commander realized that even with their advanced weapons and 10,000 years of training, they could not defeat humans. The fleet, once proud and invincible, had been broken in hours. The Valens were forced to flee into the emptiness of space, leaving their dreams of conquest behind. As the last ships departed, humans gathered to assess the damage and help those in need. Cities and villages had been scarred by fire and explosions, yet the people worked together to repair their homes. Engineers rebuilt bridges and power lines. Farmers shared food with those who had lost crops. Communities united, showing that humanity's strength was not only in battle but in compassion and cooperation. In the skies above, some of the smallest human drones and aircraft flew as symbols of victory. They had been built with creativity and courage, guided by people who refused to accept defeat. Each machine reminded the Valens, even far away in space, that Earth was defended by a force they could not understand. Courage, intelligence, and unity had defeated technology and training. The Valens learned their final lesson slowly. They had believed in perfection, in preparation, in numbers, and in control. They had trained for thousands of years to face armies that followed orders. But humans did not follow orders in the way the aliens expected. Humans acted with creativity, unpredictability, and heart. The Valens had prepared for all kinds of battle, yet they had failed because they could not imagine a force guided by courage and determination alone. Back on Earth, leaders gathered to discuss the future. They knew the Valens might return someday, but they also knew that humanity had discovered something far greater than weapons or armor. They had discovered the strength within themselves. Ordinary people had become heroes. Scientists had become strategists. Children had become messengers. Every human had contributed to the survival of their world. Stories began to spread. From cities to villages, people told of the bravery and cleverness that had saved them. A young pilot who had struck down a warship was celebrated alongside a farmer who had trapped soldiers in his field. Every act, no matter how small, mattered. Humanity had learned that even the simplest actions could change the course of history. The Valens retreated, but their tale would not be forgotten. Across the galaxy, other species would hear of Earth and the humans who had survived the impossible. A planet defended not by sheer numbers, but by courage, creativity, and unity, became a symbol of hope and strength. The universe learned a lesson: against humans, preparation and power alone were never enough. Spirit, will, and heart could turn the tide of battle in moments. As night fell over Earth, families looked at the stars and wondered if the Valens would return. Some feared another invasion. Others smiled, remembering the courage that had carried them through the first wave. They understood that as long as humans stood together, no force, no matter how powerful, could conquer them. In quiet towns, bustling cities, and peaceful fields, People rebuilt their lives. They repaired homes, planted new crops, and rebuilt machines. Yet they never forgot the battle in the skies. Children learned the stories of bravery, engineers taught new methods of defense, and soldiers trained not only with weapons but with strategies that valued creativity and unity. Humanity had survived, but more importantly, it had grown stronger. The Valens, far away in space, reflected on their failure. They had trained for 10,000 years, yet they had been defeated in minutes. They had learned a truth that no amount of preparation could teach. Against humans, the heart and spirit mattered more than skill, the courage to act mattered more than power, and unity mattered more than order. And on Earth, the people smiled at the stars. They had faced the impossible and survived. They had protected their home, their families, and their freedom. In doing so, they had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be human. Courage, will, and heart had triumphed over even the greatest invaders. Humanity had won, and the lesson was clear: no matter the enemy, Earth would never surrender.